Okay, I can hear you. Sweet. So I guess we can get started then.
Yes, sir.
All right, there's a pretty big delay between us and the actual live stream, so um, we might be well ahead into a different subject by the time uh, the others catch up. So we'll just have
Yes,
to
sir.
be wary of that while the chat's going. All right, so let's get started. Um, we got quite a few Sternritter to get through. And just for those who are tuning in, I'll probably bring it up later and later a few times, but keep in mind that Sukuna has been equalized. Ryatsu cursed energy has also been equalized, so that we can pretty much just assess Sukuna's skill and his abilities versus the Sternritter skill and their abilities. Okay, if you don't like that, go watch a different stream. Let's go. So, Alex, is there a Sternritter you want to talk about first? Is there one that you have a particular interest in?
So, Sukuna is definitely more interesting than Gojo when it comes to this because the whole debate doesn't just come down to does the exterminator have an ability to bypass infinity or not, and if he does, he wins. If not, he loses. Um, One of the Sternritters that I think is very interesting. Now we talked about should we do stuff or not, but it's actually Lele because of my opinion, the world cutting slash and how you think that would interact with Lilith's intangibility. I want to hear your thoughts on it because you are a Lily expert.
Oh, okay, excellent. So, I'm glad. I guess we can start with the shoot off member. So, Lie, do you want to just go straight to the world cutting slash since it's probably the most important topic of this of Lie?
Yeah, we can talk about how Sukuna would be handling X-axis because I think he's one of the few characters that, because of how well he adapts to something and his senses, how great they are. I think he can do things similar to Shinsui, if not better. But yeah, world cutting slash I think would be the main topic because awaiting X-axis is nice and all, but you have to be able to beat Lily at the end of the day.
Excellent. Okay, so I also want to establish one thing that I probably didn't talk about. Is I wanted to give Sukuna the biggest benefit of the doubt. In my mind, what his strongest form is pretty much a Meguna at the end of the Gojo fight, who has the world cutting slash but is fully at full power. Um, who still has access to being able to fully incarnate for pretty much a full body regen later. So keep that in mind as we discuss. As far as the world cutting slash goes, and how it interacts with Lie's x-axis, particularly his ability to phase through space. This all pretty much comes down to how you actually think Lie's phasing works. I have a particular idea of how it works. If you are in that camp of you think Lie's works very similar to almost like a quantum entangle effect or almost a taking the part of Lie's body and putting it in a different dimension, think like Obito, right? Uh, if it works like that, the world cutting slash cannot touch Lie. However, if Lie is simply allowing his particles to pass through space safely without being touched, which is a different type of phasing, the world cutting slash will be able to hit him. But the crazy part is I actually don't think it matters if the world cutting slash can actually hit Lie for the simple fact that we watched Lie survive getting his head exploded. Not just decapitated, but I mean, quite literally from his neck up, just gone. What do you think?
It does depend on, in my opinion, how immoral he is, right? If, for example, something like nuking Lily out of just existence itself, like if Sukuna is able to, let's say, land a clean world cutting slash just to evaporate Lily, can Lily come back from that? Like Gerard, for example, where you can nuke Gerard with Tika's engine and it just doesn't matter, he comes back stronger. If that is the case, then yeah, Sukuna would just probably lose to would probably just lose to Lily's immortality. But you mentioned Meguna, he does have Maharaga destroyed. Do you think he would be able to somehow, if he had Maharaga, let's say, in conjunction with World Cutting Slash, do you think he would be able to maybe adapt with Maharaga or would Maharaga just get one shotted? Because even in an equal set scenario, Maharaga is weaker than Sukuna. So just X access to the head might actually be a win con for Lily in that case.
I it's interesting. I get what you're saying. I don't know how the immortality specifically works with Lie. I wish I could just be like, yeah, it's just as good as Gerard's. Um, in this case, I would feel safer saying that Lie only has his immortality when he's in his Volstandig. When he's pretty much, from what I think we can both maybe agree on, is that he looks like he's pretty much made of light at that point. Although we can see he can still bleed to a degree, and he has seems to have some type of bodily function, like some anatomy and physiology in there. Uh, I think maybe base Lie falls prey to a world slash. Also for this Sukuna, again, I want to give him all his curse techniques just to so nobody can say we're not being fair to the man. So I want him to have the capability. I guess when I said the end of the Gojo fight, that does include losing Maharaga. But let's just add 10 shadows in as well.
Yeah, I do think Lily. We have to kind of stretch it for Sukuna to be able to permanently take down Lily. Which, well, speaking of Gerard and some other Sternritters like that, even though they are kind of tanky in their own way, I think he genuinely has a win con with World Cutting Slash against them. But against Lily, we have to argue that there's a kind of tangibility that Sukuna can bypass, and then also that he's just able to nuke Lele. Um, Maybe if they start in base, I think that's a very real possibility. If they're starting base, like I think Sukuna definitely can just work cutting slash him. But if they start in their strongest forms or just like wall standing, yeah, I do think it's like more consistent to argue for Lele as well. Still an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I agree. So in taking that base to base matchup, do you think that Sukuna would resort to his world cutting slash right away, or do you think he would take his typical, I would almost say, cocky approach, where he kind of goes in and tries to fight hand to hand, with a mix of like the point zero dismantles and the cleaves before he actually tries to go, you know, straight to the I guess to the world cutting slash.
I think he would, but for Lily to trigger the Wall Shining transformation, he has to be in mortal danger. I think 3 times. And if Sukuna does go for like the regular cleaves and dismantles and hand to hand, like he does, I don't think Lily would be in danger. I think Lily would just nuke him with X axis. And if Sukuna doesn't die from that and he realizes, wait, I didn't even see that bullet. And Lily would, if we go by canon, Lily does explain his ability, and so what I could see very much happening is Sukuna cuts down Lily's weapon with dismantle or cleave, and Lily just reforges it and hits Sukuna with it like he did with Shinsei. And I think after that, I think Sukuna would fight at his full power. If his opponent can just alt delete him out of existence, I think he would immediately go for either the roll cutting slash or whatever lethal force he has. And if he does, I do think he can kill Lily before he transforms. But if we go with center battle assumptions, then I would say Lily wins.
Gotcha. I think the most interesting thing about, or at least what one of the things I want to point out, which you said about Sukuna getting off guard, or Lie kind of reforging the diagram, which was what his sniper rifle's name is. When he reforges it, and let's say he does catch Sukuna off guard, and he lands that X axis. We're talking about Quincy's. So we're talking about the real possibility of soul damage. And do you think? I mean, we see that Sukuna can heal his soul. Um, However, it does take a long time. Now that may have been mitigated also by the fact that his RCT output was also diminished. But I'm still not confident that Sukuna could insta heal his soul, even if his output was all the way back to where it was, because um, even when his RCT output did come back, he seemed to still be struggling to heal from punches landed by Yuji towards the end of that fight. So I think Lie versus Sukuna is definitely an interesting thing. I think standard battle assumptions all it favors Lie. Um, I think in a scenario like you talked about where Sukuna goes straight to the world dismantle versus base Lie, he might be able to win. If you believe that they interact the way enough for him to actually do the damage. One thing I'm curious about though is do you so I'm a person that doesn't believe that Lie needs to open his eye 3 times. Because in the statement, the manga statement is that he's forced to go Volt standing if he opens it a third time. So it's kind of ambiguous whether he actually needs um, the
Yeah.
three eye openings to actually go into that.
He more so implies that, oh, I've opened my three times against the center. Like, it would be sinful of me if I don't also go into wall standing. But we if we go, because you give a, give a scenario where Sukuna in character goes for cleave and dismantles and hand to hand. That's why I also argued for in canon based Lele. He wouldn't be going to wall standing straight away, especially because he would probably consider Sukuna as sinner. If we go by his righteous moral standards, I don't think he would. I don't think he would give Sukuna the privilege of withstanding the son of standing, sorry, the witnessing the wall standing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, I think it would be a crime if we didn't bring up Malevolent Shrine. Um, I'm definitely of the ability. I'm definitely of the opinion that the ability itself is relatively useless against Lie. Um, but we'll probably also get into this a little bit later. I'm curious what you think, or maybe we can talk about it now. How do you think Sclavere, because we now have an example of Lie being able to use Sclavere, how do you think Sclavere interacts with an open barrier? Because we pretty much figured out that with a closed barrier, Sclavere would just, it's the ultimate counter to a domain in this scenario, but an open barrier kind of gives a little bit more gray area. What do you think?
um, mm, it it should still work, um, but maybe not as well given how big Sukuna's radius is, right? To be able to absorb Sukuna's domain like that, I think it would like require more time, and the amount of time I think Scalabry would require to, let's say, absorb a 200-meter radius domain versus how fast it requires Sukuna to hit for Malevolent Shrine should hit effect to land. I think it definitely goes more into Sukuna's favor, especially because base Lele doesn't really have any techniques that would, would help with regen or anything like that. So I think specifically against Sukuna, less so than against some other non-super lethal, not counting Gojo. Like, let's say against Yuta, I think Lily's Sclavery would work a lot better. Because the sure hit effect is not that lethal, right?
Mm.
And it's a closed, smaller barrier. But I think like against the 200-meter open barrier, I think it's a lot worse. Still effective though, if you can survive it.
So do you think that Sclavroid would just absorb the cursed energy that's in the air of the 200-meter radius, or would the only real target for Sclavroid be the shrine that's manifested?
I think both,
Mm,
but because it is bigger, I think it would like proportionally would be less effective.
mm. And I think it goes without saying, if Lie is already in Volständig by the time the domain comes out, it doesn't really matter because, and I think people may get confused about what exactly a guaranteed hit in a domain is. For those of you who don't know, it just takes the curse technique attack and places it on the person. The person themselves is the person or the character being hit can still actually, I hate to say it, dodge the technique. We have examples of characters reacting to guaranteed hits without any type of simple domain or even falling blossom for that matter. So that is pretty much in Lie's favor. If he's already in a state where he can't be touched, the guaranteed hits don't matter because they're just going to pass right through his body anyway. And that really also
Yeah.
applies for Fuga. So I think it's fairly obvious that Sukuna's only chance is catching base Lie off guard with maybe Malevolent Shrine, or if you believe that World Dismantle interacts, then that's about it. But every other scenario, I don't see Sukuna having a good chance. What about the potential of Maharaga? Or do you think it wouldn't last long enough for Maharaga to adapt?
Yeah, I think he can play. The thing is, against Gojo, he was using the rabbits and he was using Agito, but because Lily can just one shot either Agito or the rabbits, as the support for Mahoraga, he doesn't really have the luxury of, slowly adapting to Lily and figure out how things work. But if he does somehow manage to do it, like thinking about, let's say, he's somehow able to get Mahoraga to only be hit by X-axis, let's say, but not lethally, but through the arm or the shoulder or anything like that, or anything of that nature, and just hide Mahoraga in the shadows. Maybe that can work. If Sukuna can last long enough to hit Lily, but while cutting dismantles, Lily just regenerates, and Sukuna just like playing hide and seek with Lily, like Shinsui was. I think that's actually, if Lily does get to wall standing, that's probably his best win con. Um, but that's about it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so that's Lie. Any other characters you think bring up a, I guess, an interesting fight for Sukuna?
Let me think.
Because I mean,
Um, if do you want to go through Schustaffel or the other Quincy's?
I guess we can go through. Let's. We already started with Lie, so I guess we can go through the shoot stoppel first. Which one?
Yeah.
I'm also counting
I
Uryu
want to.
because I counted Uryu in the
Yeah,
Gojo video.
we can count Juggernaut as well. Juggernaut would be interesting, but I think the Quincy will be the least interesting among the Schutzstaffel. I think it's Pernida probably, where for Pernida it's the same problem with Lele. It just depends on your interpretation, because Watsu could one shot Pernida, and Pernida was only confirmed to be immortal after it had started absorbing Kimpachi. And so it depends on, was it just because Uetsu Ryatsunate Pernida, which wouldn't happen in this case since it's equal stats. And if that is the case, then uh Sukuna just loses to Pernida for the same reason he loses to Lile, even if he can cut him, right? It's because Lily's immortal than wall standing. So I think it just depends on your interpretation of Pernida. Because if not, Pernida is really useless in base. Sukuna has a way better arsenal. But if Pernida is immortal from the start, then Sukuna is cooked.
Yeah. So it's. Hmm. I might. I think. I think I deviate on the opinion here. In my mind, there's a couple of issues that we have to kind of work out because, like, in my mind, in this scenario, Pernida is pretty much like a Rika or Emoto. Like, when I think of Pernida in this scenario, his best bet is to tear off a piece of Sukuna. Any character, like we talked about, base to base, Sukuna's gonna go in for the kill. And we seen that, like, even Kenpachi, like, almost cleaving Pernida in half wasn't enough, which also kind of lends to what you were saying about Oetsu. Like, how did Oetsu kill him with Sayafushi just by stabbing him? Uh, so it's kind of weird that, like, Kenny almost cleaves him in half. Pernida survives. Oetsu stabs him once with Sayafushi and he dies. So it's very confusing. How much damage like base Pernida can actually take, but I really do see a scenario where Sukuna loses an arm or a leg and he has to RCT it. And I think, what do you think happens if Pernida is capable of doing that at the start of the fight? Do you think it snowballs from there? Because we know Pernida will adapt. He'll pretty much turn into Sukuna. So he's gonna start using dismantle cleaves. Um, I don't know if we want to get crazy to where it's like, okay, because you remember how you used the Halic file, and then the Halic file had nerves attached to them. So if the Halic file hit, it was pretty much like getting hit with the nerves. Do you think that if Pernida can steal Sukuna's technique, do you think that it pretty much guarantees him a win?
I still think Sukuna can cope with it. I think Sukuna will be able to identify, okay, my arm is getting weirdly twisted. I'm gonna cut it off. Kenpachi and Mairi both did that, and he has really good RCT. So I don't think that's necessarily a problem. When it comes to techniques, with Sukuna, it's a lot more about the user and not the technique itself. I think his curse techniques are not that particularly strong. It's more so how he utilizes them. So if Rhino goes for that, I think Suka is actually an advantage when it comes to the Arsenal, even if that happens. is just can he put Pernida down? And I think the only argument you can maybe make, because the way Pernida lost was just like infinite explosions from Nemu, essentially. Maybe you could argue if Sukuna traps Pernida in Fuga, and just if Pernida is immortal, in base, if Sukuna traps Pernida in Fuga, maybe he just like evaporates Pernida out of existence, because that seems to be more likely to happen against Lele, who is immune to Fuga anyway, and even if he does get killed, uh, with Shinsui's Bankai, he still comes back. So I think those are the only win costs for Sukuna. But if Pernida is not immortal from the start, then I think Sukuna with cleaves and dismantles, because that's usually how he starts the fight. I think he definitely has a shot of not getting adapted to by Pernida and just winning.
Fair, fair. I don't, cause it's weird, right? We've seen Sukuna, like when he fought Gojo, he had the respect to use like domain amplification, and that's something we haven't even talked about really either, is domain amplification. But we haven't
Yeah.
really needed to. So like with Gojo, he seems to have the respect, and then he tries to press in a physical attack. But we've also seen him like go straight to dismantles, like from a distance, just start throwing dismantles just to see what the opponent can take. So I think in that scenario, like you said, I think Pernida probably dies pretty easily. Especially, I think if a world dismantle comes out, I have no reason to believe Pernida can survive that. I know there are a lot of people that think because Pernida's a Soul King, uh, the arm of the Soul King, that therefore he's immortal. But we've seen that he can die. Like Nemu killed two hands, prior to even accidentally killing the last Pernida. So yeah, like Pernida isn't necessarily immortal. I just think he's really hard to kill. But I don't see. I think Malevolent Shrine without Fuga can do it. Because uh we saw the Dismantle and Cleaves like completely eviscerate Maharaga, and Maharaga can regenerate pretty fast. So I don't see how Pernida, who lost because of his regeneration, is going to overcome that Sukuna. He is probably one of the few, and sad to say again, Pernida so far does not have any wins against any of the JJK members.
Yeah, Pernida actually, because he's actually similar to Sukuna, I would say, where he grows in stats and regeneration like Maharaga. The way Sukuna started that fight was, despite Maharaga being, as we saw, severely weaker than Sukuna, Sukuna did start that fight with a dismantle. So, and cut through Maharaga. So, if he does something like that with Pranida, who, if we give Sukuna his senses, he's gonna be able to detect, okay, this guy has equal spiritual pressure as me. um, I think Sukuna is gonna pay way more respect to someone who's on his level, and just like start throwing hands.
Yeah. Do you in we've talked about, so it's pretty much well established that Cleave is Sukuna's strongest, um I would say his strongest curse technique outside of World Dismantle and his domain. Do you think that, like, because I'm trying to think about it, if he cleaves Pernida, is Pernida even going to be able to rip his arm off? Because like the whole point of cleave is when he makes contact, he's pretty much just pushing cursed energy into your body and forcing you to separate into pieces. Like I just don't. I'm not even sure Pernida might even be able to survive it.
Yeah, if he's the one landing it first, then yeah, Pranita is not gonna be able to. I don't think Pranita is gonna be able to react the same way to Kenpachi, as Kenpachi had to physically start cutting through, while Cleave I feel is just like more instantaneous anyway. Um, and yeah, I do think I do think Sukuna wins it, as long as we don't go with interpretation, and Pranita will just be able to walk through everything. But I think here it's more justifiable to say Sukuna wins it against Lele, for example.
Agreed. All right. So we got Lie winning more times than not against Sukuna. We have Pernida losing more times than not against Sukuna. Let's. I think Gerard is kind of self-explanatory. Unless you think something different.
With Gerard, I think it's super weird. Previously, I would obviously say Gerard wins. Now it's like depends on the cross. because it is very inconsistent in its showings where the first time and the last time Jaro generated, we did not see that cross, even though Kubo implied that it could have been a win con if Kimpachi was strong enough. He could have cut through the cross, right?
Hmm.
So if the cross shows in the first, like if it's more consistent, if the cross shows the first time, then I think Sukun has a very light, very high advantage of, okay, wait, this guy's transforming and I see a cross. Let me destroy that shit, right? And then he's gonna find out, wait, I can't destroy it regularly. And the next time he does kill Gerard, if he does kill him, he's gonna have to pop a world dismantle as the cross scales above Gerard. So by default, it will scale above Sukuna. And so unless, like I said, it depends on how the cross works. Like, does it just appear when he goes into wall standing? If it does, I can still see Sukuna winning because even if Jar is stronger, Sukuna still has the Fuga. He still has the world cutting slash. Um, all can help against Gerard. Who is a big target, despite being stronger. If it doesn't work like that, because Kubo is kind of inconsistent with it, then Gerard might just slam him down with a sword and kill him in one blow.
Gotcha. So, and I get you with the inconsistency about the cross because it's like when Kenpachi first cuts Gerard in half, there is no cross. Um, and then it kind of seems to, I think, Tomo probably worded it best, was it seems like the blood turns into the cross. So if that is the case, then that means the cross only exists in that split second moment, and that's the one you have to take. But I agree with your assessment. I actually think Sukuna is one of those few characters in fiction that seems to have really good battle awareness. I mean, he's literally reading Gojo's like curse techniques like almost instantaneously as he's doing them. So I actually don't see an argument to why Sukuna wouldn't attack the cross. And I mean, on top of that, he has a durability negating world slash cut. So I don't really think capability of destroying the cross is outside the realm of possibility for him. Like you said, if this is inside a domain, Fuga can definitely do it. I actually domain dismantle and cleave. Guaranteed hit on the cross also kind of does it as well. It's like in a lot of scenarios, I don't see the cross surviving attacks from Sukuna. Now, I want to bring it back to the anime because the anime added a very interesting tidbit to this. When Senjumaru is fighting Gerard, we see that when she tries to kill him, her Zanpakuto toe stops at piercing his heart, and then his heart starts to glow through his chest, and he pretty much says like, "You can't destroy me because you can't kill my heart." If if he is the heart of the Soul King, and that's what his Quincy Cross is in the base form, uh, do you think that that gives Sukuna an actual way to kill Gerard in base without ever having to deal with the god forms that he turns into?
Hmm. That's actually interesting. See, I was unprepared for that question because was I forgot that detail in the anime. That's actually super interesting. Um, hmm. Maybe Kubo didn't forget. Maybe Kubo. Maybe I was too harsh towards you.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting way you think it interacts. If that heart is if that heart is pretty much the representative of the cross and base, that kind of does give Sukuna a way to win with the with the world cutting slash. I think the problem is we don't, because of the anime, we know that at least that royal guard Senjumaru in Shikai isn't capable of destroying that heart. That's the only bit of scaling we really have for that um for that period. So it really seems like the world cutting slash would have to be Sukuna's win con in regards to the heart and base.
Yep. And the good thing about Sukun for Sukun at least is if we go by canon as well, if you go in character, Gerard will mess around. He will be arrogant. He's a big target, and because he's fighting Gerard for extended period of time compared to Lele, Fuga can warm up. He can have World King dismantle, and as we know, Fuga does definitely scale over Sukuna. So um, it's a very high possibility that that Sukuna can do something like that Sukuna can just win the fight more so than against Lele, who if he slips up once, he's dead. So
Yeah,
I would say my verdict is Sukuna wins more often than he loses against Gerard.
interesting. I pretty much had it when I made the Gojo video. I didn't include the idea of the heart when I was making the assessment, but honestly, looking back on it, I still don't think my opinion of how the Gerard Gojo fight changes. I'm not even sure a hollow purple would be enough thinking back on it anyway. So, but yeah, so it is impressive that Sukuna seems to be doing actually a lot better than Gojo, even though I think we both agree that Gojo has a better curse technique than Sukuna does.
Yeah, for Gojo though, like when it comes to Hollow Purple, I know it's not a Gojo video, but Hollow Purple does not scale that much above his normal attack potency. Sukuna can he can lose arms, but he can still survive a Hollow Purple, right? It's not, but with Fuga, it's like we established just how much stronger it is than Sukuna's usual attack potency, where he can one shot everyone in vicinity. Yet prior to that, we know that he was struggling with like Yuji Chozo and the others, and hand to hand and Cleveland dismantles. So
I agree. Now we haven't really needed to talk about Ten Shadows much, just because I don't see how it plays much of an advantage. Like, sure, summoning the other shadows helps Sukuna, but I don't know if any of them outside of maybe like the totalities that can really give him an advantage. And with the shoot Stoffel, I like it really doesn't matter, especially against like Lie and Gerard. That would really just benefit Lie and Gerard in anyway. So, but
yeah,
how do you think? Do you think Maharaga would be able to adapt to Gerard's miracle ability?
yeah. I was just about to, since you mentioned the shadows, Maharag. See against Gerard, I feel like it's way more likely because, like we said, Gerard doesn't just one shot you. I think it's actually way more likely that Maharag adapts against Gerard's miracle. Now, what kind of adaptation that would be? I don't really know. uh, it's oof. Um,
Well, I'll say this.
I'm trying to
What do you think about the
go ahead.
anime? What do you think about the anime's new interpretation of the Sukuna Maharaga fight? Because in that fight, Maharaga pretty much looks like Gerard, right? Every time Sukuna damages Maharaga, he gets bigger, he gets faster. Um, so it almost the anime's portrayal almost makes it seem as if Maharaga himself has the miracle.
Yeah, and the anime, the anime also has Maharaga just walking through Malevolent Shrine, which wasn't really what happened in the manga. Maharaga was still very much injured. It just because it has adapted so much, it's able to survive things it shouldn't. Um, because we know how much stronger 15 Finger Sukuna is. Like he implies him and Three Finger Maharaga are like rivals in stats. Um, but in the anime, as you said, yeah, Maharaga just walks through Malevolent Shrine. He just eats up everything Sukuna throws at him after a certain point. I do not agree. Like I know Gege has some hands in the anime, but I just don't agree with that interpretation because then Gojo should have been destroyed by Maharaga because Gojo was not that much stronger than Maharaga and Agito, right? Even before the Black Flashes. So it is kind of weird. If that's the case, though, Maharaga I think just is just a better drawer than because it has the miracle, but then it also adapts.
Yeah, I can very much see that reverse cursed blade finding a way to pierce the heart. Honestly, we actually have a pretty good example of it because after a pretty short fight with Yorozu, Maharaga was with Sukuna bearing full adaptation, of course, and taking damage, but his RCT really does allow him to make up for a lot of that. As long as he isn't taking like direct soul damage from like Halig File or maybe the sword, he might be fine. But if he can adapt, we saw Maharaga like with one shot destroy Yorozu's perfect circle. And what is the crazy calc on that? It's like the infinite pressure of a perfect circle, and he was able to just crack it with zero effort. So I really don't see why an adapted Maharaga wouldn't also be able to just kill Gerard's heart either.
Yeah, I agree. I think Gerard is definitely badly matched up against Sukuna. Between Maharaga and the fact that, for Gojo, he can't really destroy the cross, as even Kenpachi, who can one-shot Gerard, he is, according to Kubo, not strong enough to do that. So, uh, while Gojo has a way better arsenal, Sukuna has what is way more important against Gerard, which is the rebellion negation. Even if we take Maharaga out of account, just world cutting dismantle is way more detrimental in this fight than I think Gojo had. So yeah, my verdict is the same. However, what do you think about Askin?
Asking is so weird to me. So I- how do I put this? When I did the examination with Gojo, and I made sure I found the chapter and everything, when Jujutsu sorcerers attack an opponent, they are actively pushing cursed energy into their opponent when they make contact, even with physical blows. So it's pretty much it's pretty much exactly why they can hit black flashes. So we get to the point where honestly, with only a few exchanges, and I mean like a few, Askin adapts very quickly to Sukuna's cursed energy, and honestly, even with the dismantles, as long as Askin survives the first couple, which I really don't see why he can't, especially even if we want to go with equalized power, Askin still has Blute to enhance his defense. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to survive a dismantle. Um, eh, he pretty much dog walks Sukuna because he becomes immune to anything Sukuna can do, and not just immune. I would argue it's pretty much like Sukuna fighting Maharaga, but worse because Askin adapts a lot faster than Maharaga does. That's
Yeah,
what I think.
as well. Uh, there is one advantage that Sukuna has in fighting a opponent that adapts like that. It's Fuga, where if he's throwing dismantles that Askin are like less and less potent, he can charge up Fuga that way. And um, Now, if he's able to trap or off guard Askin with it, because Askin is prone to getting off guarded by attacks like that, where if like he can see Sukuna charging up another attack, he's like, "Oh, I'm immune to your spiritual pressure," but it's like Fuga and just like evaporates everything. That is a win con for Sukuna, I would say, but at the same time, you can also say it's a win con for Askin to use Bold Deluxe and just poison Sukuna to death, where I don't think Maharaga can even help that much, as Askin is a much smaller target than Gerard, and Askin is way harder to reach just because of his arsenal and range. So Maharaga is not really a win con in this situation for Sukuna, and Maharaga wouldn't help. Like, if Sukuna tries to put the wheel on himself to adapt to Askin's poison, not only do I think that's not really possible because of how much time it takes. Like, I guess Unlimited Void, it took Maharaga uh three domain clashes in a row, which was like 8 minutes and 40 seconds. I don't think Sukuna's gained that much time against Askin's poison. And even then against Gojo, he was very much close to losing. Now against someone who has better hacks and longer range than Gojo, I just don't see how it's possible for Sukuna to use Maharaga as a win con on himself or Maharaga as a separate entity. And I think it's Fuga. I think it's Fuga or nothing, to be honest. World cutting dismantle as well, because Asking is more long ranged. World cutting dismantle, I don't think would just like one shot Askin. I think we'll probably take off his arm or something, but I don't think he's gonna just like pierce through him. So I think Fuga catching Askin off guard, which we did see happen with Yorichi and Kisuke, they were able to do that to him. I think that is a win con for Sukuna, but I would probably place him more towards Askin.
Yeah, I think an off guard. I think I agree. I agree with the off guard world dismantle simply because we see that Sukuna gets pretty creative when the binding vow limits him um to how fast he can cast it, and on top of that, we know it moves slow. Like from every example we've ever seen of the world dismantle, it's slow. Not to say that the characters who dodged them weren't fast, but when you have characters like Higuruma dodging it at almost point blank range, that pretty much tells you how slow it is. And he also kind of caught Higuruma off guard when he fired it in the first place. So if Higuruma can dodge it at almost close range, I don't see why someone like Askin, who has Hirin Kaku, who can enhance his speed, I don't see why he couldn't completely dodge it even at close range. And as you said, Askin's a long range fighter anyway. Now the Fuga thing, I just want to push back on only because we saw Yushiro hit him one time with Shunko, nearly incinerated him. But after that, when he went to hit Askin the second time with it, um, he actually just absorbed the entirety of the fire. Like all of the spiritual energy that was released was completely absorbed by Askin. So I think an Askin who's already adapted to Sukuna's cursed energy would just absorb Fuga. On top of that, there's also you also run the risk as we talked about the Sclavere counterattack um inside a domain. Now I agree that 200 meters is definitely a lot to absorb fast enough, but inside a gift ball, um, I don't see Sukuna moving as fast. I agree that potentially the world cutting dismantle and maybe an unadapted cursed energy attack from Sukuna using Fuga. I just don't I just don't see a truly viable like I see the fight playing out this way. There's too many things like you have the gift bath, you have the gift ball deluxe, you still have Volstandig, and the craziest thing I think is forgotten with the Maharaga part of it is Askin can not only adapt the spiritual energy component of others, but he can do it to himself, meaning that his spiritual signature can change. And we had kind of had that debate about what does Maharaga actually adapt to, right? Because Sukun is like, okay, he's adapted to dismantle. So did he adapt to dismantle or did he adapt to all cutting attacks? And I think with the Gojo fight, we kind of got proof that it's a kind of a gradation. So in that fight, Sukuna probably could have used cleave and it probably would have worked. But in order to make sure he killed Maharaga, he went straight to Fuga because he had already unlocked it. Um, I'm not sure that Maharaga would be able to adapt to Askin just because he would change his spiritual components. I think he said it changes. It's like 48 cycles every second. So like I don't even know how Maharaga would ever adapt to that.
Yeah, it would take quite a while. If it takes something like Unlimited Void 8 minutes and 40 seconds, from asking, it's probably a day of adapting, to be honest.
Probably. Um, do you think any of his other techniques like domain amplification, do you actually that's actually a fair interaction between I think the bleach system and the JJK system. Do you think a simple domain would protect Sukuna from the effects of like Askin's ability? Because
Goldilocks? Yeah, the main implication would help when, like, Grimjaw cut the gift ball, right? I think if Sukuna were to do something like the same, like punch the gift ball with the main application on, I think he would cope with it much better than Grimjaw did. Um, I it's just that it's just that how reliable is using the main application. For example, if Asking just pops ball deluxe, and like sure you can use the main application to withstand the poison, but now you can use Maharaga. Now you can use your other curse techniques.
yeah, no, that's fair. So yeah, so Askin so far is 2-0. I pretty much had him walking Gojo, and I also think I mean although I think World Dismantle pretty much might be Sukuna's win con against every Sternritter aside from like Lie. Um, yeah, we might. uh, Sukuna's already doing much better than Gojo did in when I did his assessment. Asking was fun. What? So we did Pernida, Gerard, Lie, just did Askin. So do you want to do Udiu or Ugrim next?
Um, I think Uryu is more interesting. I would say So I think Drugrim will be fine. Um, against Drugrim, I think it goes back to the same thing where if Sukuna does not one shot, I think the balance just screws him over because the Uryu with antithesis was just like not able to beat Drugrim, who essentially has luck manipulation, and um if Drugrim is an intelligent fighter, if he sees the world cutting dismantle and notices the properties of it, I don't think he's ever getting caught again. And in the long run, because he can transfer some of the misfortune on the shield as well to um, to help with his balance and enhance it. Uh, it's probably gonna be a slow death for Sukuna. I think this is gonna be a longer fight, though. I do think he has the win con with Maharaga in this case because I don't like I said balance does take a bit of time to go on to activate, and so I think is more of a toss up where if he gets balanced and then Drigum just cuts him down, it's over. Against Suryu, for example, when he did use the balance, he was yapping about friends and scales when he could have realistically just like teleported to Uri and cut his head off if he wanted to, which he was about to before Shoylin. So if that happens to Sukuna, Sukuna is cooked. But if it doesn't happen and Maharaga adapts or he off guards and War Cutting Slash, I can definitely see Sukuna winning.
I agree. Could you imagine Sukuna hitting the Frune Shield with like World Dismantle? How much backlash do you think Jugrim would send? Like, because then he would actually destroy Frune Shield with it. I can't imagine the amount of misfortune backlash that Sukuna would get from the balance. I pretty much I think I'm in agreement with your assessment that this is a toss up. It really depends on how you interpret the fight, how the fight plays out because um I don't see Sukuna being able to. Nothing Sukuna can really do about the balance, especially even I think with Maharaga, because you could still even argue that he'd be able to one shot Maharaga, because and I find this interesting. Not only like when we go like going back to the manga for example, or I guess it's in the anime as well. When King Do stopped the sword stroke, from Yugrim, Ugrim's balance not didn't just let him like cut through, like he killed and splattered, sorry to be so graphic, but he splattered Kangdu across the wall. I mean, I couldn't imagine the backlash. Like he might actually with the balance be able to one tap Maharaga just by using the balance itself, which is really what you need to take care of it in the first place. We also, and I think this might be the first time this really comes into play because we're actually looking at a character that really uses a Halig. I don't know what would you call his sword, a Halig file, a Halig bogan, or just a conjured weapon. But either way, it's composed of reishi, meaning that when he hits Sukuna with it, if he's able to cut Sukuna with it, if he's able to stab him, if he's able to generate Halig file like we've seen he can do against Uryu, those attacks are relatively permanent for the fight, and I think it really hinders Sukuna. I think it hinders him a lot. I'm not sure. Although I guess you could argue Joker might avoid doing that just because he won't get as much misfortune to use. But yeah, I think this is a toss up.
So what do you think is the extent of Drugrim's balance? Because him not being able to cut his opponent is considered bad fortune for Drugrim. And do you think you dodging Drugrim's attacks would that be considered misfortune?
I really hate to say it. For Jugrim, that would be misfortune. Um, I mean, like, just think about it, right? Like, um, just playing like just using words, right? Using wordplay. Like I tried to cut your head off very quickly as to avoid, a long drawn out battle where we suffer. Unfortunately, I missed. That is, or you dodged. That would be misfortune for Jugrim, and it gets to a point where like I don't know if this is being pedantic or extremely nitpicky, but honestly, any action that you can interpret as being negative for Ugram could be uh, a power up for him using the balance.
Yeah, and that's why Drogon is so tricky, because I was thinking about it with the Ryu fight. With how long Ryu was lasting, I was like, he could have used the balance earlier, but then I also think to Drogon, it's like he was very much holding back in that fight, and he didn't have a balance for like the entire night until morning. And I'm like, technically, Drogon can beat an opponent who's faster and stronger than him, because that would be just misfortune on his part. Oh, my opponent can dodge my attack, so my opponent is adapting with Maharaga. Oh, how unfortunate for me! Let me just kill you. I think that's just something we haven't been able to explore with Drogon so much, because he barely fights. Um, and so I think if that's the case, now I don't think just dodging his attacks will make you die, because even when we saw Uryu transfer all of the wounds he had suffered the entire night, Uryu still didn't die from that, right?
Yeah,
So would Kang do? I think there was also power difference between him and Kang Do. If Sukuna is dodging attacks, if that's misfortune for Juggernaut, I think that's gonna one shot Sukuna or Maharaga. But it does give it is just another layer of issue for both of them when it comes to Juggernaut. If though he's able to off guard him with World Dismantle, because as we saw in the anime, you've memed the hell out of that. Tanjiro being able to beat Drugrim in close quarters when he has the goddamn shield. If Drugrim does go for a block against World Dismantle, he's just gonna die.
that's very true.
Drugrim isn't beefy like the other surrenders we have mentioned. He doesn't have the tankiness or regeneration to him like the other Shistov will have. So I think this is probably the closest one so far. Others I think are just like more dependent on how you interpret their immortalities. Here I think it's just genuinely a toss up between like how you interpret the fight itself, rather than their abilities.
Yeah, I'm still pissed off, and I'm very also still confused how Ugram got disarmed with a shield that was designed to not for you to not get disarmed. But okay, uh, I agree with your assessment. If he tries to take on a world dismantle, it's GG's, it's game over. However, and I hate to say this because this happened in the debate with Gambino. If Ugram gets cut in half, right, horizontally, kind of like Gojo did, and he doesn't die immediately, and this is just I'm not saying this applies, but it's a hypothetical. Would Ugram be able to use the shrift to reverse the situation? Because when he did it to Uryu, like after he got Osvalen and pretty much died, he was uh he was able to take all of the injuries from Uryu. So Osvalen plus all the injuries he gave to Uryu, plus more that he threw back because of the Frun Shield, and Ugram still didn't immediately die. And now again, it's not the same as being cut in half, but do you think that like
That is
Ugram?
very underrated feat for Juggernaut. Actually, now this is more Bleach inverse, but that's actually one of the good arguments you can use for Juggernaut being stronger than Gerard, because Gerard just immediately died after Oshvalen, pretty much. Juggernaut tanked the Oshvalen directly, and compared to other Quincy's, they were getting their wall standings stripped, right? They weren't hit with the intent to kill them necessarily, or some dodged but still got their Reishi absorbed. With Drogram and Dry, it was very much clear that they just got hit straight to the head.
Yeah,
And yet Drogram still survived longer than Drar did, then had a conversation with Uryu, transferred his wounds, and was still having monologuing in his head while Uryu was heading towards Yuha. So now I think all of that maybe matches up to getting cut in half. I wouldn't say just getting hit by Schwellen would necessarily, but uh, with Uryu, right? When he transferred the wounds to the shield and then to Uryu, right? The shield will probably get broken if he tries to transfer to the shield to amplify the unluckiness, the misfortune. And with Uryu, it's because antithesis is the reversal of it. So I'm wondering if he takes damage from someone else, could he just reverse the events, or is that just because it was antithesis doing the damage? That, oh, it's misfortune for Uryu if antithesis happens to him.
No, that's very fair. Their Jugram's ability, like you said, we don't see him fight much, and even in the fights we see him in, he only uses the balance against Uryu, so we don't really get. I'm sorry, he uses it against Kaindu as well, but we don't really get to see it interact properly with everybody. So I definitely think this is definitely how you interpret the ability and the reactions to work. Speaking of antithesis, um, do you? It's a weird situation, right? Not counting the Yuha boost he gets in the anime for Uryu, do you think that like, cause in my opinion, I don't really know how this fight goes. Like Sukuna hurts, uh, Uryu with a dismantle cleave. Uryu reverses it, but then Sukuna can RCT, and it won't be soul damage because Uryu just reverses cause and effect. So it's not like Sukuna was doing soul damage to Uryu, so it's not going to be permanent damage against Sukuna, so he could just RCT it. Like, I don't see how, aside from like leaked Reagan, what are Uryu's win conditions here?
He has I forgot the name of it. Apologies to Germans watching this. I forgot the name of the ability he does against Renji where he absorbs his Reishi.
Oh, the Feather
That's
Swinger.
a nice one. Yeah, that's a nice one, but the thing is, Sukuna does have ways of getting out. He can destroy it with roll cutting dismantle. He has Maharaga to break it. He has the the infamous threat against Gojo hiding in the shadows.
Yeah,
He has ways to get past it, and Boshin Ryu is above Renji anyway in stats, so it makes sense that Renji can't really deal with it. But in equal stat battle, Sukuna would be able
yeah,
to cope much better. I think the only the problem for Ryu is Maharaga, especially if we add Maharaga in it, because whatever Ryu does with Synthesis, it does not have the same issues as Maharaga did with asking, where 48 times per second change or anything like that. And this is just Synthesis. At the end of the day, he may reverse different events, but just the constant the shrift is the same. And so if he uses it on Maharaga and he doesn't one shot Maharaga immediately after, Ryu's kind of screwed in that sense. Best win con I can see for him is Sukuna doing lethal damage, and right afterwards right afterwards Uryu reverses and hits Sukuna with everything he has while Sukuna is RCTing. I think that's the only win con Uryu has. But if he uses antithesis differently than he did in the Joker fight, where he waited until the end of the night, or sorry, until the morning, if you use it early after like small damage or not super lethal damage, then I think he might just lose. But I'm also worried for Urius because if Sukuna wants to just finish the fight off and put him down, if the fight is going on prolonged and Uri wants to extend it to use this is better, what happens if not even working his metal? What happens if Fuga shows up? He's not reversing Fuga. He's just gonna get one shotted. So
yeah. I agree. Do you think the Quincy's like I guess natural advantage in this? Because pretty much what this is like almost every single Quincy has um m- um Maki's Soul Cutter. Like they if they hit Sukuna with any of their non-shrift attacks, and some of them do. When we get to some of the other Sternritter, they do have shrift attacks that use Reishi. Um, how do you think Sukuna handles not really being able to RCT a lot of those injuries immediately? Because like I think a domain amplification protects Sukuna from leaked Reagan. I don't see why leaked
yeah,
Reagan would overtake domain amplification. Um, I don't see Uryu's win condition. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying at the start of this. I don't really see how he wins, especially like how you point out Maharaga is going to be adapting. I actually think talking about this, Sukuna's best way to tackle Uryu is honestly to use the same strategy he used against Gojo. Summon Agi to a totality, use Maharaga, dip in and out of the shadows, use domain implication whenever you're about to take direct damage, use max elevate to attack from a distance. Uh, there's just it's not I don't see like sure Udy's going to be able to switch places with people or avoid a lot of the attacks using the antithesis, but that just the more he uses the antithesis, the more Maharaga is gonna adapt. So I just don't see Uryu having a wing. And the problem is I think out of all the Sternritter, Uryu probably has the best battle IQ out of all of them. Maybe only person I think is arguably close is Quilgay. So I don't know how it's disappointing. I don't like to see Uryu. I don't like to say Uryu loses here just because I wouldn't think that going in.
Yeah. Urio's hacks matches up way better against, for example, Gerard and other Quincy's where, unlike Sukuna, let's say against Lele, he has a win cut against Lele. He has basically a better version of the Deus Ex Machina Zanpakuto. Um, he can beat Lele. He can beat Askin in both canon and just when we look at equal stats, how the hacks interact, right? Uryu is stronger than all of them, but it's just against Sukuna. Sukuna doesn't have a um he doesn't have a hacks that necessarily Uryu can use against him to win. That like Uryu's strength is increased by how strong your hacks is. The stronger your hacks is, the stronger Uryu is. The thing is with Sukuna is like he's not that hacksy, and the hacks he has is just like, oh, we're cutting this man for one shots you. Oh, Maharaga adapts to you over time.
Yeah.
So
Um. So we did that. So we're pretty much up to shoot Stoffel. Just looking back on it, we pretty much have, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have Sukuna pretty much defeating Gerard, Pernida, losing to Lie, a 50-50 against Ugram, and then I don't want to say stomp, but defeating Uryu.
yeah,
Yeah.
Uryu still has that. Uryu still has the also sort of thing with Jugam. I just want to add that where we don't know the full extent of his ability. What can Uryu realistically reverse? Because like he like between two events, like how much can he reverse? Like what is the limit to Uryu's capability to reverse things? And if we give him the most, you know, amount of leeway, then he can beat Sukuna. But I think from what he has shown he can do, I don't think he beats him with Antithesis.
I think that's fair. Yeah. Because, I mean, like, why not just reverse the Ashvalen and rip Yuha of all his powers? Yeah, there are definitely moments where if Uryu had like a no limit version of his ability, there really isn't a moment where he couldn't have killed Yuhaba or anybody. So yeah. Um. So let's now we can move down, I guess, to the regular Sternritter, and we got quite a few. I don't think all of them require that much talking about, but we're definitely gonna get through
Yeah,
all
we
of
won't
them.
talk about the lying bozo or yeah, there was one Kimpachi was just like one shotted. Like I think they're worth mentioning, or Driscoll or anything like that. But there are definitely a few interesting ones. Quincy, they're just generally more interesting to talk about in the Espada because of the hacks.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know who I want to? Well, I want to get this one person out of the way first because they're a less impressive version of Gojo, and I don't see them. I see them just walking into literally a world dismantle, and just getting absolutely floated, and that's Nyanzel.
The
Uh,
wind.
yeah, the wind is very similar to the Limitless. Unfortunately, though, Sukuna literally has two counters to that, as we saw. So it kind of I don't really feel like Nyanzel needs to be talked about. And Nyanzel's a stationary opponent. Nyanzel does not move around, so he's literally just asking Sukuna to bypass his ability. um,
Especially how arrogant Nyanzel is in canon. Yeah, it's
yeah.
over.
Um, so the two interesting ones I want to talk about, just because we have to surmise what their schrifts do, we don't actually know exactly what they do, is Robert and BG9.
BG9.
Robert and BG9 right here in the middle. So I just in my opinion, I've always held the belief that the N has something to do with like navigation or near. It pretty much allows him to teleport to his opponent. We've seen Robert have an insane perception blitz on characters that should scale way above him. So I think his shrift has something to do with teleporting. And then as far as like BG9 goes, he's a very intelligent character. He collects information. He's the one who I think it's an anime statement that he's the one who wrote the Daten for the Sternritter. So if he can collect information and adapt, which I would say is probably very similar to Askin's ability, that's the kind of way I want to operate it. If you think their shifts do something else, let me know.
No, I agree. The cave, the knowledge, and the navigator or the nimble or whatever people want to call it.
Yeah. So just with just looking at those two, just because they're the unknown shrift guys, um, do you think any of them have really a way to beating Sukuna and his arsenal?
The thing with Robert is even when he got the Yagart to Shinsei, Shinsei still was able to still only lost an eye, right? And losing an eye is not really anything for Sukuna. And so Robert is kind of cooked in that sense where he's a one trick pony. He's just a speedster, but he's not even that much faster. And so um I think Sukuna's taking the dub there. With BG9, um BG9 has an advantage where okay, he's never getting off guarded. We can agree to that. Like he's not getting it off guarded if we give him all the information to Sukuna because that's kind of his thing. Um, my problem though is information is only as useful as long as you can do something about it. Like Batman with prep time.
Yeah.
Like Batman isn't just Batman because he has information, it's because he can prep something against your arsenal.
Hmm.
I don't see what BG9 can do necessarily, like against Soifun, where I attacked your wrist because Shunko channeled there. Like what is he doing against Maharaga, World Cutting Dismantle, Fuga, or just in general Sukuna being a very smart battle experienced soldier himself?
Yeah. I don't. So I think Robert loses as well. I don't think him using a version 2 Volstandig changes anything. Sure, he gets faster. Sure, like you said, he'll probably get some really nice off guard shots on Sukuna. But as we've seen, like we've seen Sukuna fight without limbs, fight without his heart, his tongue getting ripped out of both his mouths, uh, and then getting roasted by a curse technique that should be ripping him inside out. Right, like Sukuna can take a lot of damage before he actually stops fighting. Um, so I don't really see exactly what Robert can do, especially again when let's say Robert can just teleport all around he wants. It's not going to matter if he's within 200 meters of Malevolent Shrine. The fight's over. Um, I do
Okay, one
think.
second.
Mhm. But just to continue, to the rest of you, I think ultimately when it comes down to the two unknown, it's almost impossible to talk about. Like we could, for lack of a better word, wank their actual overall shrift and power to a ridiculous level. But I think even expanding it, like I said, to giving Robert some crazy teleporting techniques within Malevolent Shrine, that ability is negated. And then even if we go to um, BG9 being able to adapt and apply the knowledge that he gains, almost like an Askin or a Maharaga itself, it doesn't change the fact that even with the crazy durability feats that BG9 has in his fight with Soyphone, and if you think that is his adaptability, it doesn't matter because we have the world dismantle. Maharaga is going to be adapting to um, BG9 in kind. You still have the other 10 shadows techniques. If it turns into a war of attrition, I don't see the person with the weaker arsenal, especially because we don't have any confirmation that BG9 knows Quincy spells or anything like that, like Fetter Swinger that Udiu has, which is a game changer. It's impossible for him to overcome that. Um, we're not really going to talk about Driscoll or even Bernice. It's not really important to talk about. They just don't have uh, the firepower or anything that no actual battle feats to say anything about it. Or Jerome Griesbach. Jerome Griesbach pretty much is he used Kashimo's technique and all that did was blow out Kenny's eardrums. Like Sukuna pretty much took the same thing when he was half dead, and then dog walked Kashimo after that. So uh, those guys aren't really important to talk about. I think the next one, and probably the most interesting character we can talk about next, um, is my favorite, Bambietta. Bambietta is a long range fighter, so she's going to be staying away from Sukuna. And I think the most impressive thing about her is that when she does go Volstandig, her range gets longer. She's one of the few characters who I think actively could remove herself from Sukuna's domain range and yet still actually compete in a fight with him. Um, it's hard to necessarily say just because we know that it seems like a spherical shape 200 meters, but we don't necessarily know if it is exactly 200 meters up and down. We did see Fuga kind of almost like, I think, I can't remember how tall the buildings are in Shinjuku. So maybe Fuga has a chance, but we're looking at pretty much a battle of long distance. Um, I think Bambietta is also one of the few characters that could feasibly one shot Maharaga with her Reishi, but I think this fight pretty much just comes down to who hits who with the deadliest attack first. Um, Sukuna would very much likely try to, I would argue, deflect an attack, and that would actually lead to him probably dying. Um, but it kind of just depends on how you interpret this particular interaction.
Apologies for that, Azrael,
No, you're good,
and the
man.
stream.
Yeah, I was just continuing. I pretty much, as we talked about, Jerome, Driscoll, Berenice, and um, Driscoll, Jerome, Berenice. I know I'm forgetting one of the other. I hate to say losers, but the other one of the other losers. Um, and Nyanzel are pretty much not really important enough to talk about in this scenario. I was talking about Bambietta and how of the regular Sternritter, I think Bambietta poses the most, or at least the second most interesting scenario, and that's because Bambietta is a long range fighter, and then when she goes Volstandig, her range dramatically increases to the point that she tries to stay like as far away as possible from her opponent. Um, so I think I was just saying that I think it would turn into pretty much a long range scrape, and she's one of the few characters that if she did get hit, if Sukuna does use Malevolent Shrine, she's one of the few characters who can very quickly get out of the range because she can fly, and we've seen that her flight speed is pretty fast, and that her blue is, in my opinion, of the regular Sternritter, is the best blue by a mile. Um,
Yeah.
so I think
Mm.
she's one of the few characters that
Speaking of
can.
Bambietta, I also think she deals very well with Mahoraga because of the one shot potential. So for Sukuna, I think I also think he's sort of fine. Where as long as he doesn't get hit in the head, he should be able to survive getting turned into a bomb. As long as it's like not too lethal. But he also does have the ability to potentially kill Bambietta in one shot. So I think that fight is, to be honest, it might just be luck. It's like who hits who first.
Yeah, that's pretty much the determination I came out with. And I'm trying not to, if anyone knows me, I am the biggest Bambietta stan in the world. I have an entire Discord page dedicated to her feats. So I'm trying not to, I'm trying to keep my Bambietta hat off, but um, I really do think this genuinely comes down to who hits who with their best attack first. I don't domain amplification doesn't really protect Sukuna here because the race she's just gonna get absorbed into the layer of the cursed energy anyway. I mean, like no matter her bombs have that durability negating factor, and I really don't see why one of her like machine gun blasts from her volcanic wings wouldn't be able to one shot Maharaga. She also has her area detonation ability. I look at her explode shrift and she's one of those characters who's like, how do I put this? Oh, you have a scalpel? Well, I have a shotgun. Okay, you have a katana, well, I have a shotgun. Like her retaliation against someone with a hacks or a new weapon is just hit you as hard as I can with the attacks that I have. Um, and not to say that she lacks precision, because I've given plenty of examples, especially in her power profile video. She's very precise with the explode shrift. The only time we see her not be precise is when she becomes afraid, or when Giselle is in control. So I think it definitely matters. I think this is who hits who first, like you said.
Maybe added the type to bring a shotgun to a knife fight.
Yeah, that's pretty much what she does. I hate to say this. There's another character I feel like we can eliminate as having no chance, and I really, really do hate to say this. Um, uh, Meninius,
Math.
she,
Oh,
she,
Minions.
she,
Yeah.
she brings. She's like a less impressive Yuki, Tsukumo. Like I don't see, she hits really hard. That's cool. Sukuna's gonna RCT. She's gonna try to fight Maharaga and Nue, or even Divine Dog Totality. Like I just don't see her bringing anything to the table to actually do anything against Sukuna.
Um, I think if you're, because this is an class battle, if you're a stat checker, you automatically lose to someone like Sukuna, who's very smart and has just ridiculous hacks. Stat checkers just aren't it, and Meninius is one of them, which is a rare for a Quincy, right? That's more of the Espada style,
Yeah,
where it's like who can destroy more stuff. I mean, that's essentially how these Espadas are ranked. It's like, can you destroy Las Noches? Yes or no. It's like you're top four or you're below top four if you can or cannot. So Meninius, I think, just automatically loses. And one other stat tracker who has more hacks, but it's something that Sukuna can figure out on the spot, and that is Mask the Masculine. I think Mask gets completely bodied by Sukuna as well, and James in the process, where Sukuna can legit just flick his finger and kill James.
yeah.
Um, so
Oh,
yeah,
and
those two
Malevolent
are just
Shrine.
are
Yeah, Malevolent
yeah.
Shrine. Just James has nowhere to go.
I was just about to say that James seems to have to be somewhat close to Mask. So, well, it's actually one of those things where we talked about Fug, World Con Dismantle Maharaga. Now it's just actually his best win con is just Malevolent Shrine, and he just kills both of them, including Minions as well. I think just lose to Malevolent Shrine completely.
Yeah,
Um, you can't stat check Sukuna, at least in this type of versus battle. If it was just regular versus battle, obviously we have like these bozos scaling to like galaxy level threads. You have like Sukuna being mountain level maybe,
yeah,
but because we have equalized stats, it kind of doesn't matter anymore.
yeah. And it's kind of sad to say, just because like I think I don't know how she has such a big fan base, not hating at all. Um, I don't see the appeal of Little Toto here. I think it's very. I think she's definitely one of the most intelligent Sternritter. The fact that she was able to defeat Meninius off screen, and what seemed like she
Without
only
killing
took,
her.
yeah, without killing her. When Meninius' whole thing is power, it is very impressive. I think she's very intelligent, but I don't see how her shrift helps her. Like, even if you go with the enhanced version that Camp Fear and World gave her, where she can take what she's digested and add it to her reishi, I don't see how that helps her. Like, okay, her Halic file may have a little bit of dismantle properties to it, where it's sharper. So what? How does that stop Malevolent Shrine? Like, sure, Blue might be able to um, allow some of these Quincy to replicate, like kind of what Gojo did by going like max reinforcement in RCT. But that's a band aid. That's a band aid for losing a limb, pretty much.
Even Gojo had to. He couldn't just RCT until dawn. He had to he had to either bring his cursed technique back, which hurt his brain, where you have to use things like falling blossom emotion, which these characters just do not have. A lot of them just don't have something similar to that.
Yeah. So most of the Bambis, I think the. So how do you think Giselle's shrift interacts here? Do you think she would be able to? And I think there may be a counter argument for it. Do you think she'd be able to steal like Maharaga, the Shikigami? Because that's really the only way I see Giselle having a chance here.
If Sukuna even pulls up Maharaga. My thing is though, Yumichika and Nikaku were able to, specifically Yumichika was able to figure out she's baiting us. If it's in a character fight, and Sukuna sees, oh, she's baiting him to, draw the blood on him, he just dismantles and kills her.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think Giselle is very much cooked. That sort of like strat where he just where Sukuna he can just realize that. Like if Michika can, I definitely think Sukuna can, and he has plenty of long range capabilities. I don't see Giselle winning, to be honest. I mean, I even if we give Giselle like Bambietta or Toshiro, I still don't think that helps necessarily.
Oh,
Like
that's a good point. Yeah.
because of how how um, Babiata, she is much weaker, as you pointed out, when she's a zombie. And then Toshiro, is also sort of. I think he's the only one that actually gets boosted because he stops holding back so much. He's more brutal in the way he fights. But that's yeah, maybe that would help. But I don't like specifically Toshiro. I don't think Bambietta is much use, since Giselle misuses Bambietta quite a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the only hope is Bambietta. I think the rest are just like all losses.
You don't think Candace's variety of lightning gives her a chance? Or do you think just like Maharaga
Mm,
hard counters?
yeah. If we don't assume Candace just one shots with lightning, that yeah, Maharaga is a pretty. She's not a smart fighter, so
Yeah. Um. So
I'm
really
trying to
only
figure out what
Bambi.
Maharaga even does.
So we got a few left. We got a few interesting ones to talk about. So we still have everyone's favorite Asnot, Gremmy, Kangdu, Basby, our boy I almost said Nyanzel, Nanana, Quilgay, and the twins. Any of those you want to tackle first?
Oof.
Um.
Let's go with the easier one, Kangdu.
Mhm.
Mm, so Sukuna canonically goes, as we said, hand to hand, cleave this mantle. Um, he's gonna start getting bodied by the iron. He's gonna get bodied because, as you pointed out, Kangdu could completely stop Jugrim, who's stronger than him. His sword strike with iron. Now, Jugrim wasn't swinging with full speed or anything, but it still does show you can't really damage Kangdu in an equal side matchup. And so I think someone that could really help, obviously, is Maharaga, but also work on dismantle. Um, the same way Jugrim caught Kangdu off guard with the balance, I don't see why Sukuna wouldn't be able to, Kangdu sees, oh, is it just another slashing attack that can damage me? He can just cut, catch him off guard with the World Kind Dismantle and win that way.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's sad. Kangdu is one of those characters I really want to see more of, and I think um seeing him like use the iron on his entire body would have been a cool, or even a Volständig probably would have had some cool effects. But yeah, I don't see him getting past a lot of. In arguably, I wouldn't even be shocked if Cleve could start chipping away at his iron skin. Um, so yeah, it's definitely not fair. Let's try Nanana because he has a very interesting. My opinion on this simply is that within five
How many
minutes
minutes do we give? No, no, no.
yeah, if Nana can survive 5 minutes, I think he beats Sukuna, and I don't think it's
Yeah.
close. If Sukuna can defeat him
Sorry,
before
how
five
long was
minutes,
Nanana observing Aizen?
I believe he says 5 minutes. I don't have my manga pulled up on stream. Let me see. I'm pretty sure. Actually, I don't think he gives a time. He just says I've been watching you guys for a long time. Let me see if I can go to my chapter. I think that was like, oh, that's 620. No, it's not 623. Maybe it's 623. Let me check. If I get it right off the top, I'll be so happy. 623. Let's see. Oh my good, I'm so good. It is 623. Okay, so
No way.
yeah, so Nanana says, I've had a ton of time to scope out your Ryatsu. I don't know if it's something to do with that black suit or what, but your Ryatsu is all full of holes. Yeah, he doesn't specify time. He just says a long time. Um, so we're not sure how long, but we know that he at least thinks that it would take 5 minutes for him to kill Rose. So I really don't see why that wouldn't apply to and we saw that Rose was pretty messed up after the first invasion. So I really don't see why he
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to do the same to Sukuna in 5 minutes.
Now, yeah, if we give Nanana any sort of prep time, he just one shots. I think without it though, um, I can see Sukuna winning this. Maharaga obviously not really relevant here. It's more so like how long do you think it takes to charge up Fuga? Because what does Nanana have against Malevolent Shrine besides robbing Blood, right? Uh, because I think Sukuna can very comfortably close Malevolent Shrine as well. If Nana doesn't use Claveray, um, he can close and trap Nanana. And hand to hand, Sukuna should have the advantage because of the forearms. And so I like yeah, I shouldn't even say that. He doesn't need to close it. He can just open the main, go into hand to hand and try to prevent Nanana from leaving. I think that's a very viable win con. And then if like, do you think Nanana can survive 5 minutes in Malevolent Shrine? I think that's the real question. Like, if Blood is enough. If it is, then yeah, he wins.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Also because because we equalize the stats, it kind of gives Bleach characters, and I didn't really think about this until this point. It sort of gives Bleach characters an advantage because most of them have an ability or technique that enhances their speed. Um, so you could very much argue he would using Kaku, he could be faster than Sukuna, which would
Yeah.
give him a chance to get out. But I still don't know if again you have to have blue all the way activated. You have to be using Kaku. And it doesn't even matter that you have blue active. You're still going to be getting hit from every single direction with cleave and dismantles. And we know that eventually cleave gets to a point where it turns into durability negation inside the domain, like because it matches your power level, so it's going to always hit. It's always going to do damage. Um, eh, and then again, really, we have to go back to that very obscure Sclava um, attack, and it's still not even guaranteed that it would tear down an open barrier. So the barrier might still be going. It's just if Sukuna wises up, which he is pretty smart in battle, if he realizes he has a timer on how fast he needs to kill Nanana, he'll win. But if he's arrogant and he just starts playing with Nanana like how he did with Jogo,
Everyone in Shinjuku.
yeah, it's he'll probably actually obliterate Sukuna. And really, and the saddest part is like there isn't anything Sukuna can do about it. If once he gets hit with the underbelly symbol, it really like Sukuna can incarnate. He can. It's not gonna matter.
Yeah. Unless he makes a binding vow for that, like with Gojo.
Oh yeah, we haven't even really gotten into the necessary to talk about binding vows yet. So maybe there is a way to binding vow his way out of it. Sukuna's pretty good at those. So I think this is the two I think people most want to hear about of the ones that are left. Although we still have a couple, is Asnot and Gremmy. Um, I I think so. The only reason I had Gremmy even losing in a scenario to Gojo is the infinity problem, and forcing infinity on Gremmy's brain I don't think is a good idea because we know that Gremmy can subconsciously use his abilities. Like he doesn't actively have to be thinking to use his abilities. So that would just seem like a bad thing to me. But do you think Sukuna has a chance against Gremmy?
Um, he can definitely outsmart Grimmy. and he still, because of Grammy's arrogance, he definitely has the capability to one-shot him. Because remember, Kenpachi just swung down harder to get past Grammy's defense. Um, Now imagine if, let's say, Sukuna tries dismantle, Grammy blocks it, and then Sukuna goes for the wall cutting dismantle. I think Grammy's just gonna try and tank it. That's the worst part about Grammy. But if Grammy's locked in, as he was at the end of the fight, he can just BFR Sukuna, send him into galaxy space, send like trap him in a water cube, create multiple clones of himself, summon on a meteor. Like it just depends. Like if we go by quote unquote standard battle assumptions, which is a more serious Grammy, I think he beats Sukuna easily. If it's the beginning of the fight where Grammy puts the hands in his pockets, tries to tank everything, says he's the strongest, then he loses.
That's fair. Yeah, in character, Grammy hurts himself a lot, and I did talk about that in my use difficult to use shrift video. It's imagination is as much of a danger to the user as it is the opponent. Yeah, I think I agree with that assessment. I don't see a serious Grammy losing um to Sukuna just because, like, for example, just the one other clone, right? Grammy pretty much stated that the clone watches his durability, and Grammy watches the other like, they're pretty much making sure that they can take whatever they get hit by, and then just with those two, they summon the meteor. And Sukuna, even if we were to somehow give Sukuna Fuga and he could hit the meteor with it, the meteor would absolutely overtake Fuga and kill Sukuna. It's and actually, we have a perfect example because Max Jogo's Max Meteor could have really hurt. What Sukuna was that? 15 finger Sukuna or 16 finger Sukuna
Yes.
technically? Um, so we have like a 15 finger Sukuna who's under threat from Max Meteor, and it moved too slow to hit him. So there's nothing to say that a full powered Sukuna versus a larger meteor that's the size of a country. Like, there's nothing to say Sukuna's dodging that. So that,
Yeah.
like, two Grammys is way too much for Sukuna,
Yeah.
even
Let's
in
let's
standard
let's
battle
talk about
assumptions.
7 Grammys.
Yeah, 7 Grammys gets insane. So it's really funny that, like, even Grammy's power has this thing where even with equalized stats, we equalize the verse that cursed energy and spiritual powers can interact. All these things, these caveats we put in, and like Grammy just giving himself a clone just completely outscales Sukuna. Like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
All right.
Too haxy.
Yeah. So here's the other guy, Asnot, everyone's favorite, the internet's favorite emo kid in the modern century. Uh, Asnot's. I think we can both say that. Like, I don't know. What do you think? I'll let you go first on Asnot.
Standard battle assumptions again. I think Aslan wins. Base to base though. Um, if maybe maybe Sukuna tanks it for funsies, but if he doesn't do that, then I don't think asking Aslan has anything left in his arsenal. Really, he has no defense, no extra durability, or tankiness like the other Sternritters. I think he just very badly loses. But if we go with standard battle assumptions, do you think Sukuna would be able to figure out the mechanism behind fear like Byakuya did on the spot? Or if he puts a wheel on himself? I don't know.
Yeah, those are definitely his options. But even with those, he'd still be feeling the effects of fear mid fight. And I think that's the dangerous thing about it is, like, Byakuya overcame it even though, he had already fought Asnot, had time to think about it, and then he shows up at the end of the Asnot fight. Like, he doesn't actually really even get to. You could argue he really doesn't get the full brunt of the fear, while also being attacked and someone trying to kill you, which just amplifies your fear. Um, we already know that Sukuna can feel fear. So it's I don't see Sukuna winning this fight. I think, again, Malevolent Shrine is a win con, but even in character, I don't know if there's an in character version of Sukuna that just goes straight to Malevolent Shrine. He did against the finger bearer curse, but I think that was just because him and the finger bearer curse were pretty relative in power. Although he does talk smack like they're not, but it is weird to me that he goes Malevolent Shrine. Yeah.
Mm. What do you think? So do you think Malevolent Shrine would work while he's under fear?
Oh, that's a great question because it is an image. It's something he has to focus on. So, ooh, that's a great question.
I think Fuga is an easy one, though obviously it takes time to charge up, but like Fuga is just like you detonate it. I don't think you need to think much about it. He can just detonate the Asnod's Volshining the main expansion with all the eyes. But I was just wondering if Malevolent Shrine can still work through fear. He still has a shot where he can just destroy the eyeballs around him, and maybe kill Asnod in the process, or at least help with the fear. Um, I think the like it's just how do they start the Sukuna not fighting character, but it's more serious, and how long does it take for Maharaga to adapt if it can even do that in time, right? I think this is more of a toss up than with Grammy because with Grammy we had to assume it's just the most chill form, non interested version of Grammy. Here it's like you know, Sukuna has a win con. He has a shot to win. I would say ball standing though. I think Asuna is just too broken. Base to base, I would go to Sukuna.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I think I'm still leaning more as not even in base. He's definitely not durable. It's weird because he just seems so gangly and like he can't take a hit, but he takes some really nasty hits against Rukia and gets back up. Like that absolute zero slash he survives. I think was very impressive. Um, but you can definitely argue he wasn't frozen all the way through necessarily, so he had a little bit of way to fight back. Um, Asnot's definitely in that weird position where like with a prolonged fear exposure, Sukuna he's not gonna be able to hit Asnot as well, so he's gonna need his shrine to make up for the fact that he's probably not gonna be able to hit Asnot anymore. And then there still might be even some detriment that he might not be able to use his innate domain. Maharaga's gonna take time to adapt, and I don't even know how it. I guess you could say it adapts to fear, but even if Maharaga does adapt, it pretty much just becomes a 2v1. Um, and I don't even know. Like you would have to argue that Maharaga can somehow also make Sukuna immune to the fear, which I don't really seeing. We're also still running the fact that Sukuna could die from a heart attack from the fear. Do you think if Sukuna incarnates, it would reset? Do you think that would reset the fear?
That's actually funny. I don't think he'll get it in time though, because you don't really think straight when you're under fear.
Oh, that's fair. Um, yeah, and then Volstagg Asnot's just I really don't know many characters that can defeat Volstagg Asnot. So that leaves our last few guys: Basby, Quilgay, the twins, and Pepe. I'm just gonna say off rip, if Pepe lands an attack, he wins. I really we literally saw someone in JJK with a similar ability, a weaker version than Pepe's, and they were able to take over Sukuna's mind. So I think Pepe is pretty straightforward. If he hits Sukuna at any point with a love rope, it's over.
I do have to push back on that though. Sukuna was able to resist Yurozu, which is a pretty great feat.
Rozu threw herself naked and everything at Sukuna. He still resisted. Does that make Sukuna the does that make Sukuna the strongest incel of the Heian era, or just like uh the, the strongest incel of all time? Um, so Basby is also one of these characters who has a seemingly pretty straightforward ability in fire, but I have to say he's actually is one of those few schrifts that actually seems to have the ability to scale above himself. Like I feel like the way he amps up with burner fingers, I feel like once you get to like that fourth and fifth, those are attacks that pretty much scale above himself.
Yeah, it's not like the burner fingers. Like, so sure, some have like longer or bigger range, bigger, sorry. But they do not seem to get hacks increase. So I think 1 through 5 should be an increase in attack potency specifically, and um, Pasby was able to save himself and Nana and Aslan from Yama's Shikai. Maybe Yama wasn't going all out, but he was pretty angry in the whole war situation, and Pasby still, with massive injuries, still was able to save the two of them and himself. So whatever burner finger he used, probably one of the high ones, they're they definitely do scale above him. I do agree with that.
Yeah. Um, do you think that matches up? So, do you think? And it actually brings up an interesting scenario. Um, do you think if he somehow survives Fuga? I'm sorry, he's surviving the slashes of Dismantle and Cleave from Malevolent Shrine. Malevolent Shrine. Do you think he has the firepower to counter Fuga the same way he did Yamamoto?
Um, do you think the gap between Sukuna's attack potency and his Fuga is bigger than between Bazby and Yamamoto? I think that's the question.
Uh,
Fuga might low key be bigger, just because how much he was just able to one shot everyone while being so weakened.
I don't know, man. Choso was able to stop it. Yuji's simple domain stood.
I,
Mhm.
I don't even know how,
Yeah, I don't know
but
either. We even saw uh Miwa's simple domain was able to hold off Sukuna's attack for a bit before she got saved by Boogie Woogie. So that was interesting. But I just don't see. I think Basby falls prey to the fact that he doesn't have the hacks like some of the other characters we talked about. Like, sure, he has the firepower to hit way harder than Sukuna, and I think definitely think there are arguments to say he could completely incinerate Sukuna in some instances. But I mean, like Malevolent Shrine again. Like we get to this point where Malevolent Shrine, because it works so differently from Unlimited Void. I mean, Basby lost to Gojo in my analysis of the Gojo one, but here it's just like the domains for some of these Quincy, they just don't have good counters. Um, sure, I think Basby's also one of those few people that if it was a closed domain, he has like the range and attack power to just break out from the inside. I personally believe that. We'll probably get more into that like when I do Yuta or somebody else, but it doesn't matter here because it's an open barrier. It's not going to help him, and um, I just don't. Outside of him hitting Sukuna first with like a Burnerfinger 4, or 5 at like near the start before Malevolent Shrine pops, I don't see Basby winning. Because I mean, Basby, what he got his arm cut off and then got stabbed and he was done. Like I hate to be that guy, but like I most other characters in Bleach have better endurance than that.
yeah.
All right, and so the last three are Quilgay, and the twins.
Does the, does the what's the name Lloyd? Does he get access to Maharaga? How does two Maharagas work?
It's very interesting. So I brought this up in the Gojo one. So the boys copy the physical body, and then one copies the actual powers, the other copies memories and information. So, but they still get like relative power to the opponent. But this is equalized stats, so it doesn't really matter. Um, it gets weird, right? The boys would then have access. They should because curse techniques and even innate techniques are engraved on the flesh. So they should get access to the same arsenal. Now the question is, are they better at using the abilities than Sukuna? I don't know.
Yeah. I think for Lloyd, um, I think for Lloyd, Sukuna would just be smarter, like Kenpachi, legit just adapted, just grew stronger. I think Sukuna would be more aware of his arsenal and how to use it than Lloyd is. And with Royd, who do you think Royd would copy before the fight?
I in this scenario, I had the boys copying their opponent, so they would both be copying Sukuna, or I guess
Royd
Megano.
is kind of cooked because with Royd, it's like he's only 70 to 80%.
Yeah.
It's not good. Royd is weaker in this scenario than Lloyd is.
Chogetsu says they both copy Sukuna 2v1. Do you think a 2v1 of Royd and Lloyd? Actually, that does make it more interesting since Sukuna does get access to Maharaga and like all the 10 shadows. But then again, I guess the boys would also get access to 10 shadows as well. Because actually, now that I think about it, if Royd can mimic the domain expansion of Sukuna, the only advantage Sukuna would have is that he would have 20% more output. But in a domain clash, I don't think that matters because the guaranteed hits would turn off. So they pretty much this fight essentially comes down to who's I think now that I think about it, who actually has the best combat training. Um, because even with a smaller output, like it doesn't like 20% isn't enough to have your domain overtaken, and both domains would be open anyway. So the guaranteed hits would turn off, and it would just either be a hand-to-hand combat fight, or one of them would have to use a binding vow to get one over on the other.
And we know who's more experienced using binding vows.
Sukuna. In Royd's case, though, he would have Sukuna's personality, so that might, and memories. So I mean, that might help him counter. But then again, he still does have the lower output, um, at about
Yeah.
20 to 30% lower. So
The thing is, 20-30% can be pretty big of a difference. Like, if they're throwing, like, dismantles cleaves at one another, all of Sukuna's cleaves and dismantles are going to be stronger by 20-30%. And that damage is going to accumulate over time.
yeah, in attrition, they'd probably lose out. I think that pretty much applies to both brothers. You also run into the problem of Lloyd copying the power level of the person in front of him, which I still don't understand. When you pointed out that Sukuna's output was ramping up as he was fighting Gojo, like if Sukuna fights like that against Lloyd, he's gonna win because Lloyd's gonna copy the lower output version, and then as they're fighting, Sukuna is just gonna be pretty much like, oh, this is the pace you can fight at, and just ramp it up. Like, and we saw that Lloyd. I don't know if Lloyd can't do ramp it up as well because like the way Kenpachi explains the fight and the anime doesn't expand upon it was like, okay, we were fighting, it was a good fight, and we were equal, but then like I just got stronger and cut him down. So like, did you take off your eye patch and then one shot him? Like, did you get stronger as the fight was going and then he just couldn't keep up? Like, he doesn't really explain it. And then from the brief showing of it, I just think he like spiked his power and cut him down, which is embarrassing because that means Lloyd's ability doesn't change with him or his opponent.
You could attribute that to Kenpachi being Kenpachi, to be fair. Like, I don't think Sukuna can do it quite as well as Kenpachi can. But, yeah, I do have Sukuna beating the twins.
Gotcha. All right, and the last person, who has a decent hacks. I don't know how you feel about the jail. Um, we also know that he's probably the most well-rounded Quincy, not named Yuhaba. um, if he's training all the other Quincy in their abilities and how they fight, I really don't see why any feat that they can do isn't something he himself can do. We also know he knows Soken. Kuge might be the most experienced person, again, outside of the Schutzstaffel and Yuha himself, in this group.
Yeah. Um, do you think, I think the biggest question here, do you think jail can be dealt with cutting slash?
I think it can be. I think it's the only. thing that can get him out of the jail. Like, I hate to do a no limits fallacy, um, but the manga backs up what Quilge said. I mean, Yuha backs it up. Yuha literally says that ability is not meant to jail Quincy. It's the only thing it can't stop. And Ichigo, as being more powerful than Quilge, was hitting it as hard as he could, and it wasn't budging. Not to say that, like, if Yama used, like, East with the jail hold up, I have no idea. Um, I doubt it personally. Um, but looking at it, maybe like a focused malevolent shrine, like a binding vow to focus the targeting to the cage, could free Sukuna. Um, could Sukuna also maybe summon like his Shikigamis outside of the cage? I think that's kind of weird. I don't think that makes much sense. Um, I don't know. The
Do you think you
cage.
can dip? Do you think you can dip out of the shadow? Because I'm thinking about it. If it's like so insane, you can only escape it if you're a Quincy. Like I assume you can't really just go through. You can't just use the what's the Ranker's technique where they open open the fucking portal. I forgot the name of that technique. Like Ukiura does it,
Are you talking
but
about the Garganta?
yeah, yeah. What's the technique for opening the Garganta? I forgot.
Kumon.
Oh, yeah, that thing. Like if it's so easy to get out of it, or you just teleport out of it, or you use the Kido that Tosin and Aizen use in Soul Society, right? If it's as simple as that, I don't think it would be hyped up. So that's why I'm doubting that he can just dip into his 10 shadows and spawn out of there.
Yeah, I don't think it's that easy. I will say in the anime, I don't remember this being in the manga. When Ichigo was firing the Getsuga from inside the jail, um, so it looked like some of the Reishi got or the Ryatsu got outside of the thing, but like not far. So like my question is, do you think that like even though he's trapped inside the jail, do you think Sukuna has a means to fight back? Like for example, like he could use the Max Elephant blood manipulation technique he used against Gojo to fire from. Although I don't really think that's doing much against Quilge because Quilge has Ranso Tengai. He has a pretty good blute. His hearing Kaku's great. His Scalavere is insane. So I feel like if Sukuna gets trapped in the jail, that's pretty limiting. What do you think about Malevolent Shrine in this case?
Okay, so Malevolent Shrine should still be able to work on Quilge if Quilge approaches him while he's in the jail. Fuga should actually should Fuga he should be able to activate Fuga if he starts rage spamming his technique on the jail, right?
He
And he
should
should
be
be
able
able to
to.
summon Shikigami outside of the jail, even if he himself cannot leave the jail. It doesn't say you can't summon something out of the jail.
Yeah. It's weird because, like, in one instance, like how you pointed out, it has the ability to even seal interdimensional things, but it still seems to let Ryatsu out, weirdly enough. So it is kind of weird how the jail works. Um,
Yeah.
do you think that once Sukuna is stuck inside, sorry, excuse me, that Sukuna is stuck inside the jail, do you think he just kind of becomes a sitting duck for whatever Koge wants to do?
So let's say Fulgi gets him there. What I would do if I were Sukuna, I think he might do as well is like summon Malevolent Shrine, which should be effective against the jail, but should be effective on Kulge still. If Kulge approaches Sukuna, I would summon the Shikigami outside of the jail. I would use like rabbits as protection, and I would probably have Maharaga and Agito either fighting Kolge or trying to get Maharaga to adapt to get him out of the jail. And that might actually be a pretty decent stalling win con till he either gets out or maybe Kolge loses to Maharaga plus Agito plus Malevolent Shrine plus Fuga potentially.
Yeah.
Because
hmm
yeah, because so Sukuna can't differentiate techniques. Like he can't like save others from his own technique from Malevolent Shrine, but Maharaga should be unaffected, correct? Because it's part of Sukuna's arsenal. Or how does that work?
We're not sure. Sukuna can't pick targets, so I feel like if he summoned them inside Malevolent Shrine, they'd get torn to pieces. The only thing it
Hmm.
ever said Sukuna doesn't target himself in his domain. I don't know if that's an attribute of the domain itself um, or
Yeah.
you know what
Hmm.
that is. There's another Shigetsu in the chat brought up Ion Quilgay if that would make a difference, but I actually think that opens up a different thought process and one we kind of didn't talk about because I mean not a lot of Quincy have the Sclavere feat. Ion, a summoned being, like a being that made of Ryatsu, was absorbed by Sclavere, and then Ion used that, and then even though Ion is a hollow, he was able to still use Ion's power as his own. Do you think that if Sukuna summons a Shikigami, that Quilgate could actually absorb them?
Yes.
Mm.
I actually forgot about that. Yeah. So it might actually be more. It might actually be smart for Sukuna to pop Malevolent Shrine when he's trapped in a jail and just pray Kogi can't get to him that way. Or he's able to charge up Pooga in time. Because I don't think mhm. Do you think Kogi will be able to because how would then the jail interaction work? Would he have to open the jail to damage Sukuna? How would that work? Or could he damage him through the jail?
So, from the only person we've ever seen put in the jail, which was Ichigo, it had gaps, like gaps that like things could fit in, but not like gaps that people could escape. I don't see why he couldn't attack in the gaps, like into the jail. You also have the other, I would say the other problem, right? Of again, even if we want to say like, okay, let's hypothetically say Sukuna could really increase his output and try to tank some of the attacks until Malevolent Shrine can free him. Sukuna can't actually RCT the damage, or at least if he does, it's going to be really, really slow to the point that he's not going to be able to keep up with what Quilgate can do. Um, like the Shikigami are useless against Quilgay. It actually, could you imagine Quilgay absorbing Maharaga? He would literally be able to adapt to Sukuna. Although we do know that the power does eventually go away, so there is that. But I don't see why Quilgay wouldn't be able to attack Sukuna if he's stuck in the jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sclavere is GG
So
for Maharaga.
yeah, Sclavere actually, yeah, I forgot about that Ion feat. He just absorbed him in like 5 seconds, bro. Kind of insane feat.
Yeah, and I think that was the scariest thing is that like Ion's a chimera, so it's kind of like his spirit particles might be looser than your average like Soul Reaper or other soul. It doesn't matter because like in this scenario, the Shikigami are made purely of cursed energy. So they're just waiting. They're snacks, basically. They're snacks. Um. So yeah, sadly that's pretty much it for Quilga. If he can trap Sukuna in a jail, I think he wins. You also have the other problem, and I think this is hilarious. If Sukuna jumps into a shadow, we know for a fact because I mean Quilga literally closed a portal through time and space and locked it. He should be able to lock um Sukuna in his own shadow.
He just killed Sukuna by starvation.
Yeah. I, I hate to say it, like it's not even BF farming because the way the way Megumi explains shadow dropping, like you can jump into your opponent's shadow because that's their space that you've created with cursed energy, but it's actually very similar to the Quincy shadow in that you have to create like a pocket. So Megano only has his shadow in base. He has a bigger shadow in if he were to use Chimera Shadow Garden, but he's not using it in the scenario. His own shadow, he'd be stuck in a space. it actually, this is the worst part, and I think this is actually a great ending to the live stream. Is pretty much how Sukuna is in real life. The monk he was based on, he was trapped in a box this about the size of his body. If he jumps into his own shadow, he can close the shadow on Sukuna, essentially locking him in his own shadow forever. And he'd just be mummified all over again.
Yeah. So, Sukuna's win con is Malevolent Shrine and us praying that World Cutting this Math will cut through jail.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, Maharaga is getting absorbed, which is really bad, actually. Because then if he summons Maharaga and it gets absorbed, now Sukuna is the one who has to one-shot Quilge. Otherwise, he gets adapted to.
Yeah. And the scariest part is once Sukuna shows his hand and about having the world dismantle, I don't see Quilge getting hit by it really again after that. Quilge drops his guard against Ichigo, but in Quilge's defense, he has to worry about Chad, Orihime, Kisuke, the Trusbestias, Ion, and Ichigo. Like he's fighting an entire like squad of people. So
Only way I can see it is like Quilge traps him in the jail, then he gets close to the jail, and that's when Sukuna, like he tries to kill Sukuna off, and that's when Sukuna pops it. That's the
yeah,
only way I can see it, which isn't that unlikely, depending on the execution method Quilge chooses. But um, that's pretty much it because it's just a question. What do you think? Do you think Sukuna would pop Maharaga before he pops World Dismantle? That's the real question character. I think that's kind of hard to prove because he lost 10 shadows after he got World Cutting's mantle.
yeah,
Kind of hard to say what he would do first in character.
yeah. It definitely depends on like you said his approach, right? Like because Gojo he needed, or at least his plan was to adapt first, as opposed to approach the fight like he normally would. And then even we can't even. It's hard sometimes to say how Sukuna approaches a fight because it depends on how he feels about his opponent. Like Sukuna is a very moody person. Like even if they're semi equals, he could still be pretty arrogant. Like he was still arrogant against Gojo, even though he. I mean, what does he say? That poetic line he says to Gojo, "You're the only person who's ever cleared my skies," or something like that.
Yeah, you cleared the skies for me.
Yeah, so it's like even someone who is his equal, he does arrogantly talk to Gojo throughout most of the fight, but then at the end of the fight, he's like, "Bro, I love you." So it's definitely a weird thing how he interacts here. So just overall, one last go over, just make sure I got everything square. We said Gerard probably beats, Pernida probably beats, Lie loses, Ugram a toss up, Uryu he beats, Askin dog walks him, Bambietta's a toss up. Um, a lot of Nyanzel, Berenice, Massa Masculine, Jerome, I forgot dude's name already. The Overkill. Driscoll, BG9, Robert, Kangdu, Lil Toto, Giselle, Meninius, Candace, um, and Basby. They're all pretty much getting destroyed. The only people I think we said that like outright defeat Sukuna was Askin, Asnot, Lie, Quilge has a pretty good win condition, and then Drugum with a toss up, right? Oh, and Bambietta.
Yeah. Um, so I forgot about your Gojo video. I think Sukuna has a better win record overall, if I'm not mistaken.
Um, so Gojo wiped most, actually every single non-elite. I think I had him winning against.
Oh,
Yeah, every single non-elite lost. Um, the people who I had getting close matchups with Gojo was Uryu, and then the people who actually beat him was like Gerard, Lie, Ugram, and Askin, I believe, and Grammy. Those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people could beat Gojo. While here we had 1, 2, 3, 4, ooh, 5. So only 5 could beat Sukuna. So yeah, I guess Sukuna does have a better win rate than Gojo.